They walked in with boxes and smiles. But when I said no, the HOA president closed her fist around that clipboard. I stayed quiet until the title deed shifted. Then I didn't just speak. I evicted the entire board. You think community means unconditional support. Try living in a neighborhood where the HOA sees your home as theirs to command. When Barbara Barb Kensington asked for just a few weeks to store HOA records after the community center flood, I should have known better. But sometimes the best revenge isn't raising your voice. It's lowering the boom legally. My name is Lila Thompson, and at 33 I finally had something completely mine. A 2-bedroom craftsman cottage in Pinecrest Villas, perched on a gentle hill where the morning marine layer rolled in, and you could smell the salt air mixed with fresh-cut grass from lawns that had to be exactly 2.5 inches tall or face a $50 fine. After years of cramped apartments with paper-thin walls and landlords who ignored the heat, signing those closing papers felt like signing my Declaration of Independence. I'd worked my ass off 7 years as a financial advisor, first fetching coffee at a corporate firm, then striking out on my own with 60-hour weeks, networking events where I nursed 1 glass of wine all night, and more rejections than I could count. My little consultancy was thriving, and this house with its original hardwood floors and bay windows was proof I'd finally made it. The first month was pure bliss. I'd wake early just to drink coffee on the back porch, watching the fog lift. I painted the spare bedroom sage green, turned it into my office, hung my diplomas, arranged my books on floating shelves. Everything had its place. After growing up in chaos, I needed order like other people needed oxygen. The call came on a Tuesday evening in October. I was reviewing portfolios with Nora Jones playing softly when my phone lit up with Barb Kensington's number, the HOA president who'd welcomed me at the moving-in mixer with a basket of approved welcome cookies and a 20-page rulebook. Lila, honey. Her voice had that syrupy pitch that meant she needed something. How are you? Sweetheart. Fine. Barb. Just working. I minimized my spreadsheet. Already bracing. That's wonderful. Listen, we have a little situation with the community center. That awful storm flooded the storage room. 20 years of meeting minutes, rule books, all ruined. The board voted unanimously that your lovely spare room would be perfect for temporary storage and a few board meetings until the repairs are done. Just a few weeks. Honey, community helps community, right? I looked around my sanctuary and tried to imagine Barb's pastel blazers and Derek's beer gut crowding my space. Barb, oh, Lila, you're such a team player. We'll be so quiet. You won't even know we're there. Derek will help carry everything. He's handy, you know. In the background I heard Derek grunt something about real men and power tools. I thought about boundaries, about the life I'd built, about the kind of neighbor I wanted to be. I thought about Barb, 61, with her perfectly coiffed hair and that smile that never reached her eyes. By the time I called her back, I'd already made my first mistake. I'd convinced myself I was strong enough now, that my house was my territory, that I could handle a few weeks of disruption. You can store the records in the guest room, I said. But there are going to be rules. Oh, Lila, thank you. You won't regret this. Promise. We'll be model guests. I gave her the address and hung up, then immediately texted my best friend. I think I just made a huge mistake. Looking back, that was the understatement of the century. But sometimes you have to let the storm in to remember why you built the seawall in the first place. They arrived on a Saturday morning with more stuff than any temporary storage should require. I watched from my living room window as Derek's beat-up F-150 pulled into my driveway. The truck bed was piled high with cardboard boxes labeled HOA Archives, Do Not Touch, garbage bags stuffed with rule posters, and a folding table that looked like it had seen every board meeting since 1995. My stomach twisted. This didn't look like a few weeks' worth of paperwork. There's my favorite new homeowner. Barb emerged from the passenger side, arms spread wide, her smile too bright, pearls gleaming like tiny weapons. She wore a new-looking cardigan and carried a clipboard like a scepter. Behind her, Derek hauled himself out, already scowling at the hill, the neighborhood, the existence of gravity itself. I met them at the door, trying to keep my smile steady. "Hey, Barb." She pulled me into a hug that smelled like drugstore perfume and hairspray. "Oh, honey, this place is perfect for the board. Look at this porch, Derek. Look at this porch." Derek grunted and headed straight for the truck. "Where am I supposed to put all this?" "Guest room down the hall. Second door on the right. Garage has space too if we—" He hefted a box that clanked. Probably beer cans disguised as filing supplies. "Barb, quit gawking and help me." For the next 2 hours I watched my carefully ordered space disappear under an avalanche of HOA life. Boxes stacked in the hallway labeled, "Approved paint colors only." Derek's folding recliner, a monstrosity of cracked vinyl, planted in my living room facing my TV. Barb's collection of ceramic, community spirit, angels crowding my bookshelves, shoving aside my first edition mysteries and business books. "Oh, this is just perfect," Barb chirped, arranging her angels. "Just like home, right, Derek?" Derek was already in the kitchen opening cabinets. "You got any beer?" "I don't really drink beer," I said. He looked at me like I'd spoken in tongues. "What kind of person doesn't keep beer in their house?" "The kind who prefers wine." "Wine." He said it like a curse. "Barb, add beer to the list. Real beer. Not that craft crap." Barb laughed nervously. "Derek's particular about his brands. I'll pick some up when I go shopping. Speaking of which, honey, I was thinking I'd cook us a nice community dinner tonight. Celebrate being neighbors again." "That sounds nice, Barb, but I actually have plans." "Plans?" Derek emerged with a sandwich already made from my groceries. "Too good to eat with the board?" I lied smoothly about a client dinner. Derek grunted, appeased. "Money's money, I guess. At least somebody in this neighborhood understands that." The dig at Barb was so casual she didn't even flinch. She just kept arranging her angels, humming tunelessly. By evening my house was unrecognizable. Derek had claimed my living room. ESPN blared at a volume that rattled the windows. Empty beer cans littered the coffee table. His work boots, caked with mud, sat on my Persian rug like an insult. I retreated to my office, closing the door against the noise. This was temporary, I reminded myself. A few weeks. I could handle a few weeks. The first real conflict came the next morning. I woke at 6, headed to the kitchen for coffee, and found Derek frying eggs in my best nonstick pan with a metal spatula. The scraping sound made my teeth hurt. "Morning," I said, reaching for my coffee maker. "You always up this early?" He didn't look at me, just kept scraping. "Must be nice, setting your own hours. Being your own boss. Not everyone gets to play pretend business owner." I measured coffee grounds carefully, counting to 10. "It's not pretend. I have real clients." "Sure you do." He flipped the eggs onto my favorite plate, the one my best friend gave me as a housewarming gift. "Just saying. In the real world, people have to actually show up somewhere." "Barb." "Honey, leave her alone." Barb called from the doorway in her robe. "Lila works very hard. I'm just making conversation." He pushed past me, leaving grease on the fridge handle. "Somebody's touchy this morning." I took my coffee to my office and stayed there until I heard his truck leave. When I emerged, Barb was cleaning the pan he'd destroyed. "I'm sorry," she said without looking up. "He's just stressed about the board election coming up." "Barb, he can't talk to me like that in my own house." "I know, honey. I'll talk to him." She always said that. She never did. By the end of the first week, Derek had colonized my entire house. His belongings spread like a virus, reading glasses on my end table, medication bottles on my kitchen counter, laundry draped over my dining room chairs. Barb had discovered my home office and decided it would make a better board command center. "You can work anywhere with a laptop," she announced, already moving my things. "We need a proper space for HOA business." "What business?" I asked, voice level. "Approving paint colors, enforcing grass heights, making sure nobody puts up the wrong flag. Lot of opportunities for someone with my experience." Barb's experience consisted of getting re-elected every year by bullying the other board members. "I need my office for client calls," I said firmly. "It's professionally set up. Don't be selfish, Lila. We're community." I looked to Barb for support, but she was suddenly very interested in her phone. That night, I set up a makeshift workspace in my bedroom, grinding my teeth as I heard Derek's TV blaring through the wall. They'd been there 10 days when the real occupation began. I came home from a coffee meeting to find the locks had been changed. "Oh, honey." Barb met me at the door with a shiny new key. "Derek thought it would be safer, with us coming and going. This way we all have access. You changed my locks without asking me." Derek appeared behind her, beer in hand. "Relax. I did it myself. Saved you $100. "You're welcome. I didn't ask you to. Can't leave things unsecured these days. Lot of crime in nice neighborhoods. People see a single woman living alone. They get ideas." "I'm not living alone anymore," I said pointedly. "Exactly." He smiled, and something cold settled in my stomach. "Good thing we're here to look after the place." That night, I lay in bed listening to them argue about fines, about whose turn it was to mow the common area, about why the last board member had quit. Their voices carried through my walls. Derek's getting louder with each beer. When something crashed in the kitchen, I put in earbuds and pulled up rental listings on my phone. Then I stopped. This was my house. I'd worked for this. I wasn't going to be driven out by a woman who'd already taken too much from too many neighbors. But as their temporary stay stretched into its third week with no sign of ending, I started to understand something. Barb wasn't planning to leave. The board election was coming, and she'd found a nice house with a built-in maid service, me, and a resentful landlord, also me, who could be bullied into compliance. "Feels good to have a real command center again," she said one evening. Feet up on my coffee table, remote in hand. "A president needs stability." Barb beamed at Derek from the kitchen where she was cooking dinner with my groceries. "Doesn't it just feel like we're a real board family now?" I looked around at my invaded space, at the life I'd built being slowly demolished, and felt something shift inside me. Barb had taught me a lot of things in the short time she'd been here. How to recognize the sound of entitlement in a clipboard tap. How to disappear when voices got too loud. How to clean up after accidental spills. But the most important thing she taught me: sometimes the only way to deal with a bully is to become something worse than what they expect. And unlike when I was younger, I now had resources she couldn't even imagine. "Yeah," I said, smiling at them both. "Just like family." The breaking point started with something small. A ceramic bird feeder I'd hung on the porch. My favorite, hand-painted with little blue jays. I found it in pieces on the concrete the next Thursday morning. "Oh, that old thing." Barb barely glanced up from her breakfast of my organic eggs. "Derek bumped it while he was enforcing the no visible feeders rule. Community standards. It wasn't cheap," I said, kneeling to gather the shards. "Same difference. Cheap HOA-approved alternatives are in the garage." He forked another piece of my ribeye into his mouth. "Barb, we need more steak. This organic stuff tastes weird." Barb murmured something about adding it to the list I would inevitably pay for, just like I'd been paying for their groceries, their gas, their everything since they'd temporarily moved in a month ago. "From now on," I said, standing with the broken pieces cradled in my hands, "please be more careful with my things." Barb's fork paused halfway to her mouth. The kitchen went quiet except for the running water. Derek set down his fork with deliberate slowness. That's interesting. Here I thought when neighbors helped each other, things were communal. It's still my house, Derek. Is it? He leaned back, the chair creaking. Because from where I'm sitting, looks like our command center. We live here. We contribute. What contributions? The words came out before I could stop them. You haven't paid for anything. You haven't even fixed the community center. His face darkened. I'm developing board strategy. You're watching Netflix 12 hours a day and drinking my wine. Barb. My voice was sharp with warning. Apologize to Derek right now. For what? Telling the truth. Derek stood slowly, his bulk filling the kitchen. I'd forgotten how big he was. How he could make a room feel suddenly airless. You want to talk truth, little girl? How about the truth that you owe the community? Barb sacrificed everything for this neighborhood. And this is how you repay her, crying about a stupid bird feeder. She didn't sacrifice anything for me. She chose power over every single homeowner who ever complained. The silence that followed was deafening. Barb's face had gone pale, her hands twisting a dish towel. Derek's jaw worked like he was chewing on words. You ungrateful little. Barb. Please. She intervened. She didn't mean it. The hell she didn't. He stepped closer, and I smelled the familiar cocktail of beer and entitlement. You think you're better than us because you've got some fancy job, because you bought a house. You're nothing but a spoiled brat who forgot where she came from. I didn't forget. I escaped. I met his eyes. His hand twitched, but instead of hitting me he smiled, cold and mean. We'll see about that. The psychological warfare escalated after that. My things went missing, important client files, my laptop charger. They'd turn up in strange places later. Derek started scheduling board calls during my client meetings, his voice booming through the walls. He'd invite his buddies over without telling me, leaving my house reeking of cigars and littered with beer bottles. Community bonding. Lila, isn't that what neighbors are about? That mean smile never reached his eyes. Barb became his enforcer. Guilt her weapon of choice. When I locked my bedroom door, she cried about trust. When I password protected my computer, she lamented that I was treating the board like criminals. When I opened my own mini fridge in my room, she accused me of dividing the community. I just want us all to get along, she'd say, usually after Derek had done something particularly invasive. Is that so much to ask? The financial drain was constant. They ate through my groceries, ran up my utilities, broke my things, and shrugged it off. Barb started using my address for HOA mailings, which turned out to be some sketchy community improvement scheme. Packages arrived daily, filling my garage with inventory she'd never use. Investment in our future, she'd say, using my credit card to order more. She'd gotten the number in case of emergencies. Everything was an emergency now. I started hiding things, important documents, valuables, anything I couldn't bear to lose. My bedroom became a fortress, but even that wasn't safe. I come home to find things subtly moved. My sanctuary violated in ways that couldn't quite be proven. You're getting paranoid, Barb said when I installed a lock on my closet. Derek would never go through your things, but I knew better. This was their pattern: push boundaries, gaslight, escalate, make you feel crazy for protecting yourself, make you the villain in your own story. The dinner that changed everything happened on a Tuesday. I'd had a brutal day. A client had pulled out of a major investment deal, and all I wanted was to heat up some soup and go to bed. Instead, I found Derek in my home office, the room I'd explicitly forbidden, on my computer. What are you doing? He didn't even look guilty. Needed to check my email. My laptop's acting up. Get out. My voice was low. Dangerous. Get out of my office right now. Your office. He laughed. Last I checked, we live here too. That makes this our command center. No, it doesn't. This is my house, my office, my computer, and I want you out. He stood slowly, towering over me. Or what? Or I'll call the police and tell them what? That your neighbor used a computer. He stepped closer, backing me against the door frame. You really want to involve cops in a community matter? You're not my community. The words hung between us like a challenge. His face flushed red, that familiar sign of incoming rage. Barb! She called from the hallway.
Tentative.
Is everything okay? Your neighbor's having one of her fits, Derek said. Not moving. Thinks she owns people now that she's got money. I don't think I own people. I think I own my house. Then maybe you should live in it alone. He leaned in close, his breath hot on my face. But we both know you won't kick out your poor old neighbors. You're too soft for that. Too weak. Barb, please, she pleaded. Let's all just calm down. I am calm, he said, still staring at me. Just teaching your neighbor about respect. That's when I said it. The thing I'd been holding back for weeks. Respect like the respect you showed when you changed my locks. When you slandered me to the entire neighborhood as anti-community. When you stole my credit card for your little schemes. That kind of respect. The backhand wasn't hard. Derek was smarter than that. It was just enough to snap my head to the side. To make my eyes water. To remind me who had the physical power here. Barb! She rushed forward. But not to me. To him. Always to him. You promised. You promised you wouldn't. She provoked me, he said, shaking out his hand like I'd hurt him. Running her mouth like that. Someone needs to teach her consequences. I touched my cheek, feeling the heat there. Barb hovered between us, wringing her hands, torn between her neighbor and her provider. I saw the moment she made her choice, the same choice she'd been making for years. Lila, you need to apologize, she said quietly. You shouldn't have said those things. I looked at her, really looked at her, at the woman who'd chosen this man's comfort over every single homeowner's rights again and again, who stood there now watching him loom over me and still took his side. You're right, I said finally. I shouldn't have said those things. Derek smirked victorious. Barb relaxed. I should have said them years ago, I continued. And I should have changed the locks the day after you arrived. But don't worry, I'll fix that mistake. You do that, Derek said. And your precious neighborhood will hear all about how you're evicting the president. I looked at Barb one last time. She made her choice. Now I was making mine. I walked to my bedroom and locked the door, my cheek throbbing. Through the thin walls I heard them talking. Derek ranting about ungrateful neighbors, Barb trying to soothe him. The familiar soundtrack of my new life playing out in the house I'd bought to escape chaos. But this wasn't my old life anymore. I wasn't trapped. I wasn't helpless. And I wasn't going to run. I pulled out my laptop and started researching legal options, eviction procedures, property law. By morning I had a plan. It would take patience and careful execution. But Derek and Barb had taught me patience. They taught me how to wait, how to watch, how to strike when they least expected it. They thought they'd won by putting their hands on me again. They thought I was still that quiet new neighbor who'd flee rather than fight. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Because there's one thing about growing up with bullies. It teaches you exactly where they're weak. And Barb's weakness was her certainty that she was untouchable, that the neighborhood would always bend to her will, that homeowners like me would always cave to her pressure. She'd counted on my softness, my guilt, my fear. She hadn't counted on my anger, and she definitely hadn't counted on my lawyer. The war for my house had officially begun. The morning after Derek hit me, I woke up with a bruise on my cheekbone and a clarity I hadn't felt in weeks. I took photos in the bathroom mirror, documenting the purple bloom from multiple angles. Evidence. Then I covered it with concealer and went to make coffee like nothing had happened. Barb was already in the kitchen, moving with the nervous energy of someone trying to pretend everything was normal. She'd made pancakes, my favorite recipe, back when she still tried to act neighborly. "Morning, honey," she said without meeting my eyes. "I made breakfast. Thanks, but I'm not hungry." I poured my coffee, noting how her hands trembled as she flipped a pancake. "Lila, about last night, we don't need to talk about it. But I think we do." She finally looked at me and I saw she'd been crying. "Derek feels terrible. He didn't mean." "Yes, he did. He meant exactly what he did, just like he always has. That's not fair. He's been under so much stress with the election." "Barb, I'm 33 years old. I run my own business. I own this house and you're standing in my kitchen making excuses for a man who hit me." She flinched. "It wasn't like before. You provoked. I spoke the truth in my own home. If that's provocation, then yes, I'm provocative." "You don't understand what it's like," she said, her voice dropping to barely a whisper. "Being my age, having nothing, depending on the board for everything. You have your whole life ahead of you. Options. I have Derek. You have me," I said. "You've always had the neighborhood, but you keep choosing him. It's not that simple." "It is exactly that simple." I took my coffee and headed for my room. "I'm done being collateral damage in your power trip." I spent the morning on video calls with clients, my concealer holding up under the ring light. I researched. California HOA law was complex, but I wasn't looking for standard eviction procedures. I needed something cleaner, faster, something Barb wouldn't see coming. Around noon, Barb knocked on my door. "Derek's gone to meet with some potential donors. Maybe we could talk." I let her in. She sat on my bed, looking smaller than her 61 years, clutching a cup of tea like a lifeline. "I know you're angry," she started. "I'm not angry, Barb. I'm done." "What does that mean?" "It means I want you both out of my house." Her face crumpled. "Lila, please. We have nowhere to go. The community center is still flooded." "That's not true. You have family in Arizona. Derek has a brother in Nevada. You have options. You just don't like them. Those aren't real options. Derek's brother hates him and my sister." She shook her head. "You don't throw neighbors out on the street. Derek's not my neighbor. But I am." She grabbed my hand, her skin papery and cold. "I'm your HOA president. Doesn't that count for something?" I looked at our joined hands, remembering all the times she hadn't held the neighborhood's concerns. When I was new and she fined me for the wrong mailbox color. When I complained about noise and she told me to be more community-minded. When I begged the board to reconsider a rule and she chose power over fairness. "Being president isn't a free pass," I said gently, pulling my hand away. "Not anymore." She left my room crying, but I didn't follow. I had calls to make. That evening Derek came home in high spirits. His donor meeting had been at a bar, judging by the smell, but he was riding the high of potential success. "Good news, ladies," he announced, dropping into his recliner. "Got some investors interested in my consulting firm. Big money people. They recognize talent when they see it." Barb brightened immediately. "That's wonderful. When do you start?" "Well, they need to see a business plan first. Professional presentation. All that corporate stuff." He looked at me. "You do those, right? For your clients?" "I do," I said carefully. "Great. You'll help me put one together. Community helping community, right?" He grinned, already seeing his future success. "With your computer skills and my industry knowledge, we'll have those investors eating out of our hands." "I charge $1,500 for business plan consultations," I said. His grin faltered. "You'd charge neighbors? You're starting a business. right? First lesson, everything has a cost. His face flushed. After everything we've done for you, what exactly have you done for me? The temperature in the room dropped. Barb made a small noise of distress. I helped raise this neighborhood, he said, voice low and dangerous. Put a roof over everyone's heads, with Barb's rules. With the neighborhood's money in fines I helped pay for as soon as I moved in. Ungrateful little, he muttered. Barb, she gasped. What? It's true. We come here in our time of need, and she lords it over us like some kind of queen, acting like we're parasites. If the shoe fits, I said. He was out of his chair before I could blink, crossing the room in 2 strides. But I was ready this time. My phone already in my hand. Recording. Go ahead, I said, holding the phone steady. Hit me again on camera this time. He froze, his fist half raised, finally noticing the phone. You're recording me. Just documenting our neighborly interactions for the memories. Turn it off. No. We stood frozen. Him looming. Me recording. Barb hovered behind him, wringing her hands. Derek, please, let's all just calm down. She's threatening me, he said, not moving. In my own command center. My home, I corrected. My name on the deed. My mortgage payments. My rules. Our home, he insisted. We live here. That gives us rights. Actually, it doesn't. I kept the phone steady. You're guests. Guests I no longer want here. You can't just throw us out. There are laws. Yes, there are. Would you like me to explain them? Or would you prefer to step back and let me leave my own living room? For a long moment nobody moved. Then Derek stepped aside. His jaw clenched so tight I could hear his teeth grinding. This isn't over, he said. No, I agreed, walking past him. It's just beginning. That night I heard them arguing. Derek's voice rose and fell like a tide. Barb's responses getting quieter until she was just agreeing with whatever he said. I lay in bed with my door locked, listening to the man who terrorized the neighborhood stomp around the house I'd bought to escape chaos. The next morning I found my laptop missing. It turned up hours later in Derek's truck, which he claimed was an accident. My client files were mysteriously corrupted. My coffee maker wouldn't work. Derek had accidentally put salt in the water reservoir. Petty warfare designed to break me down. Maybe if you were nicer, Barb suggested, watching me clean salt crystals out of the machine. Maybe if you apologized. For what? For wanting to live peacefully in the house I bought. For being difficult. For making things harder than they need to be. I looked at her. Really looked at her. At the woman who'd chosen this life. Who'd rather gaslight every homeowner than confront the man she'd shackled herself to. You're right, I said. I am making things harder than they need to be. She brightened. So you'll apologize. Try to get along. No. I'm going to make things much simpler. That afternoon, while they were out grocery shopping with my credit card, I'd already reported it stolen and ordered a replacement. I met with my lawyer, Maggie Corwin. Her office overlooked the harbor. All clean lines and legal books. The exact opposite of the chaos in my home. Self-help eviction is illegal in California, she said, reviewing my documentation. Even for unwanted guests, you have to follow proper procedures. How long would that take? 30 days minimum after serving notice. Longer if they fight it. They'll fight it. Then we need a different approach. She leaned back. Considering tell me about your financials. The house is solely in your name. Yes. Bought it before they moved in. They've contributed nothing to mortgage or upkeep. And you have documentation of the assault. I showed her the photos. The video of Derek advancing on me with his fist raised. Good. But probably not enough for a restraining order unless he escalates. She tapped her pen against her desk. Have you considered restructuring your ownership? What do you mean? She smiled, and I understood why she had a reputation for creative solutions. Let me tell you about LLCs and property management companies. I left her office with a plan. It would take finesse and perfect timing, but it would work. Derek thought he was playing checkers, using brute force and intimidation like he always had. But I'd learned to play chess, thinking 3 moves ahead. When I got home, they were unloading groceries, expensive steaks, imported beer, things I'd never buy for myself. "Oh, good. You're here," Barb said. "I got that coffee you like, the fancy organic kind." "Thanks," I said, knowing it was bought with my stolen credit card. "That's thoughtful," Derek grunted from behind a case of beer. "Least you could do is help carry this stuff in." "Of course," I said, grabbing a bag. "Community helps community, right?" He shot me a suspicious look, but I just smiled. Let him wonder. Let him worry. They taught me patience after all. And I'd learned that the best revenge wasn't served cold. It was served with proper legal documentation and a 30-day notice. The war for my house was entering its next phase, and this time I was going to win. The formation of Liberty Holdings LLC took exactly 5 business days. Maggie handled the paperwork with the efficiency of someone who'd done this dance before. While Derek lounged in my living room watching sports and Barb fretted over keeping him happy, I was quietly restructuring my entire life. The beauty of this approach, Maggie explained during our second meeting, is that you're not evicting them. The new property management company is simply exercising its rights as the legal owner. "But I still own the LLC," I said, signing another form, "through a trust," which adds another layer of separation. "As far as Derek and Barb are concerned, you've sold the house. The LLC's decision to require them to vacate is just business, not personal. He'll still know it's me. Eventually, maybe, but by then the legal notices will already be served. He can rage all he wants, but he'll be raging at a corporate entity. Not you personally." I smiled. "You're brilliant. I've been doing this for 20 years. You'd be surprised how many people need to legally extract themselves from toxic neighbor situations." She slid another document across the desk. "This transfers the deed to the LLC. Once it's filed, Liberty Holdings officially owns your home. How long before we can serve notice?" "I'll file today. We can serve notice tomorrow, 30 days from then. If they haven't left voluntarily, we begin formal eviction proceedings." "They won't leave voluntarily. Most don't, but the paper trail will be impeccable. They won't have a legal leg to stand on." I signed the papers with a steady hand, feeling something shift inside me. For the first time in weeks, I could see the end of this nightmare. That evening, I came home to find Derek had rearranged my living room. My couch shoved against the wall. My coffee table relegated to a corner, all to make room for his massive recliner and the 65-inch TV he'd bought for the board on credit. "What do you think?" he asked, not looking away from the screen. "Better flow, right? That designer you had going was all wrong for the space." "It's certainly different," I said neutrally. Barb emerged from the kitchen with a beer for him. "I think it's nice. More homey, right? Lila?" "Sure, Barb." Derek finally looked at me, suspicious of my calm. "You feeling all right? You're being awfully agreeable." "Just tired. Long day of work." "Work?" he snorted. "Must be nice sitting at a computer all day, moving numbers around." "It pays the bills," I said. "For now." He took a long pull of beer. "But when my consulting business takes off, you'll see what real money looks like. Might even buy this place off you. Give you a nice profit." "That's ambitious." "Ambition's what separates the winners from the losers in this world." He gestured at the TV with his beer. "Take this guy, started with nothing, built a construction empire. That's going to be me." I glanced at the screen. It was some reality show about flipping houses. The kind where everything always worked out perfectly in an hour. I'm sure it will, I said, heading to my room. Good night. Hold up. His voice had that edge that meant trouble. Barb says you've been locking your door at night. I have. That's not very trusting. We're neighbors. I sleep better with it locked. I'm a light sleeper. He stood, using his height to intimidate. You saying we make too much noise? I'm saying I sleep better with my door locked. We stared at each other. I kept my expression neutral, giving him nothing to grab onto. Finally he shrugged. Your house. Your neurosis. Just remember, trust is a two-way street. I'll keep that in mind. In my room, I pulled up my laptop and checked the county recorder website. The deed transfer was already processing. By tomorrow, Liberty Holdings would own this house. I looked around my bedroom, my sanctuary, and felt a flicker of something that might have been hope. The next 3 days passed in a strange suspended state. I went about my routine, working with clients, making coffee, dodging Derek's increasingly aggressive attempts to provoke me. He seemed to sense that something had changed, that his usual tactics weren't working. You're up to something, he said Thursday morning, cornering me in the kitchen. All this quiet little mouse act. I know you. You really don't, I said, pouring coffee with steady hands. I know enough. You're just like Barb weak. Need someone to tell you what to do. If you say so. He slammed his hand on the counter, making Barb jump from across the room. Don't dismiss me, girl. I'm trying to help you here. Trying to make you understand how the world works. I understand perfectly. Do you? Because from where I'm standing, you're a lonely woman pushing 40. 33 with no man, no kids, no real life, just this house and your pretend job. That's not success. That's failure dressed up nice. I looked at him, at this man who'd inserted himself into my neighborhood and made it a battlefield, who'd convinced Barb that his mediocrity was her salvation, who genuinely believed that his presence in my life was some kind of gift. You're right, I said. I don't have any of those things. He blinked, thrown by my agreement. I don't have a man who drinks my money and calls it ambition. I don't have kids I can't protect from the chaos I choose to live in. I don't have your version of a real life. I picked up my coffee. Thank God for that. His face went purple. You little Barb. She rushed between us. Please, not again. Lila, apologize. No, Barb. Please, no more apologies. Not for existing in my own space. Not for having boundaries. Not for refusing to pretend this is normal. This is exactly why you're alone, Derek snarled. No man would put up with this attitude. Good thing I'm not looking for one. Then I walked past them both. Barb's pleas following me down the hall. In my office, now Derek's den, I saw he'd been busy. My carefully organized files were scattered. My books reshelved according to his system. My awards and certificates taken down and stacked in a corner. Making yourself at home? I asked from the doorway. He'd followed me, Barb trailing anxiously behind. Someone needs to use this space properly. All that corporate decor was depressing. Those were my professional achievements. We're past tense. Time to focus on the future. He pushed past me into the room, settling behind my desk like he belonged there. Speaking of which, I need you to help with that business plan this weekend. I told you my rates, and I told you neighbors don't charge neighbors. Then I guess you'll have to find another consultant. He leaned back in my chair, my ergonomic chair that I'd saved for months to buy. You really want to play hardball? Fine. Barb and I have been talking. This arrangement isn't working out. I agree completely. So we've decided you should move out. Give us some space to get our lives together without your negative energy bringing the community down. I actually laughed. You want me to move out of my own house? It's the best solution for everyone. You can get a nice apartment, something more suited to a single woman. We'll take care of this place. Maybe rent out your room to help with expenses. Barb, she said quietly. That's not what we discussed. Shut up, Barb. I'm handling this. No, I said. You're not. You're not handling anything. You're a 60-year-old man with no job, no prospects, and no legal claim to anything in this house. Legal claim. He stood, using his bulk to fill the doorway. Is that a threat? It's a fact. And here's another one. Things are about to change around here. The hell they are. I know my rights. We've been here over 30 days. That makes us tenants. You can't just throw us out. You're right, I said. I can't. He smirked victorious. But Liberty Holdings can. His smirk faltered. What? The new property management company that owns this house. They'll be in touch soon about the change in ownership. You sold the house. Barb's voice was barely a whisper. I restructured my assets. It's a business decision. You can't do that, Derek said. But uncertainty had crept into his voice. You can't just, we live here. Not for much longer. The doorbell rang before he could respond. Perfect timing. I'd been tracking the process server all morning. I'll get that, I said, stepping around him. But Derek followed, Barb close behind. When I opened the door to reveal a uniformed process server, Derek's face went from confused to furious. Lila Thompson? The server asked. That's me. I have documents for Barbara Kensington and Derek Kensington regarding the property at this address. That's us, Barb said faintly. The server handed them each an envelope. You've been served. Have a good day. Derek tore open his envelope, scanning the papers. His face cycled through emotions, confusion, understanding, rage. Notice to vacate, he read. 30 days. Liberty Holdings, LLC. He looked up at me. You think you're clever? I think I'm done being a victim in my own home. This won't hold up. I'll fight this. Feel free. Maggie Corwin is representing the LLC. I'm sure she'd be happy to explain your lack of legal options. Maggie Corwin. Barb recognized the name. She's that lawyer who helped you buy the house. Among other things. Derek crumpled the papers in his fist. You manipulative little. You planned this. I protected myself. There's a difference. We'll see about that. He stormed toward the kitchen, pulling out his phone. I know people. You're not the only one who can play legal games. Barb stood in the doorway, holding her envelope like it might explode. Lila, how could you? How could I what? Take control of my own life? Refuse to be abused anymore? Which part are you objecting to exactly? We're community, she whispered. No, Barb. Your community. He's just the man you choose over every homeowner's rights every single time. I left them there and walked to my bedroom, locking the door behind me. Through the walls I could hear Derek on the phone, his voice rising as he realized how thoroughly he'd been outmaneuvered. 30 years of bullying hadn't prepared him for someone who'd learned to fight back with paperwork instead of fists. The war for my house had entered its final phase, and for the first time since they'd arrived with their boxes and their entitlement, I knew I was going to win. The night after the papers were served should have been chaos, but instead it was eerily quiet. Derek had stormed out after his phone calls led nowhere, and Barb had retreated to their room. I lay in my bed, listening to the unusual silence, waiting for the other shoe to drop. It dropped at 3 a.m. I woke to the sound of breaking glass, not accidental breaking, deliberate, methodical smashing. I grabbed my phone and crept to my door, already recording. Derek was in the living room, methodically destroying my things. The coffee table, a vintage find I'd restored myself, lay in pieces. Picture frames littered the floor, family photos torn from their holdings. He held my ceramic vase, another piece from a local artist, raising it high. Derek, stop. Barb pleaded from the hallway. This won't help anything. She wants to play games. He brought the vase down hard on the floor. It exploded into shards. Let's see how she likes replacing all this shit. I stepped into view. Phone held high. Please continue. The insurance company will want to see this. He froze mid-swing with one of my bookends. You're recording me again. Always. Smile for the camera. Derek. Put that down. He took a step toward me. Glass crunching under his feet. No, I said. Put it down. He threw the bookend. It missed my head by inches, punching a hole in the wall behind me. Barb. She rushed forward. What are you doing? You could have hurt her. That's the point. He snarled. Little neighbor needs to learn to defend myself. I kept recording, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Already learned that lesson. You taught it well. I'll teach you another one. He grabbed a kitchen knife from the counter. Barb? No. She tried to grab his arm, but he shoved her aside. She stumbled, catching herself on the wall. You're going to stab me? I asked, still recording. In my own home? On camera? That's your plan. He looked at the knife in his hand like he wasn't quite sure how it got there. The rage was still there, but uncertainty crept in at the edges. I'm calling 911, I said, already dialing. You have about 5 minutes to decide if you want to spend tonight in county lockup. You wouldn't dare. 911. What's your emergency? The operator's voice was clear in the sudden silence. This is Lila Thompson at 1427 Pinecrest Lane. My neighbors are destroying my property and threatening me with a knife. We're sending units now. Are you in immediate danger? He's about 10 feet away holding a kitchen knife. Derek dropped the knife. It clattered on the tile, spinning away under the table. Tell them it's a mistake. Tell them now. He just dropped the weapon, I reported. But I still feel threatened. Stay on the line. Officers are 3 minutes out. Derek's face had gone from purple rage to ash and panic. Barb, tell her. Tell her to call them off. Barb looked between us, tears streaming down her face. Lila, please. He didn't mean it. You know how he gets when he's upset. Yes, I said. I know exactly how he gets. That's why I'm done. You'll ruin his life. He has a record. They'll violate his probation. I hadn't known about the probation, but I wasn't surprised. He ruined his own life. I'm just documenting it. Sirens wailed in the distance. Getting closer. Derek made a calculation, grabbed his keys, and headed for the door. Barb, don't, she called. Running will make it worse. Shut up. He yanked open the door. This is your fault too. You said she'd cave. You said she was soft. Then he was gone. His truck roaring to life in the driveway. Barb collapsed on the couch, the one piece of furniture he hadn't destroyed, sobbing. Ma'am, the operator's voice. The officers are pulling up now. Can you meet them at the door? Yes. Thank you. I walked past Barb, glass crunching under my feet, and opened the door to 2 officers. They took in the destruction, the knife on the floor, Barb crying on the couch. You called about a domestic disturbance? The older officer asked. Yes, my neighbors destroyed my property and threatened me with a knife. I have it on video. I showed them the recording. They took my statement, photographed the damage, bagged the knife. Barb watched it all from the couch, aging years with every question they asked. We'll put out a bolo for his vehicle, the younger officer said. Do you want to press charges? Yes. No, Barb whispered. Please. He's just upset about losing the command center. This isn't my house anymore. Remember, I said, it belongs to Liberty Holdings. I'm just the property manager. The officers left with promises to follow up. I stood in my destroyed living room, surveying the damage. Thousands of dollars of my carefully chosen things reduced to garbage in minutes. Are you happy now? Barb asked from the couch. Is this what you wanted? What I wanted was to live peacefully in my own home. What I wanted was neighbors who respected boundaries instead of exposing everyone to their entitlement. What I wanted was a president who chose the community over her meal ticket just once. I did the best I could. No, I picked up a broken picture frame, a photo of me from my college graduation, back when I still had hope we could have a normal neighborhood. You did what was easiest. There's a difference. Where am I supposed to go? She looked small and lost among the destruction. When Derek doesn't come back, where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore. I'm your president and I'm your neighbor. When has that ever mattered? I left her there and went to my room, locking the door. I could hear her moving around, trying to clean up the mess Derek had made. Always cleaning up after him. Even now. The police called around noon. They'd picked up Derek at a bar 2 towns over, drunk and belligerent. With the video evidence and his probation status, he was being held without bail until his hearing. He's asking to speak with you, the detective said. Something about dropping the charges, working things out. No, that's your right. We'll proceed with the charges as filed. Barb must have been listening because she started knocking on my door as soon as I hung up. Lila, they arrested him. You have to help. No, I don't. He'll go to prison. Real prison this time. Good. How can you be so cold? She was crying again. Or still. He's not perfect, but he loves the board. He's all I have. I opened the door. You have the neighborhood. You've always had the neighborhood. But you throw it away every time he beckons. That's not true. When I was new, he fined me for the wrong bird feeder because I left a light on. You told me I should have been more compliant. That was when I complained about noise. You knew I was lying. You knew what happened. You chose not to see it. Couldn't. When I begged the board to reconsider a rule, I showed you the alternatives we could afford together. I had a plan, Barb, and you chose him. It's not that simple. It is exactly that simple. I stepped past her. And now you get to live with that choice. I spent the rest of the day dealing with insurance, cleaning up glass, documenting damage. Barb packed her things in silence, loading them into her ancient Honda. She'd aged a decade overnight, her face drawn and hollow. Where will you go? I asked as she loaded the last box. My sister's, I suppose, until I figure things out. That's good. Aunt Sarah always liked you better than Derek. She never understood. Nobody understood what it's like being alone at my age. You're not alone. You're choosing to be with someone who hurts you, who hurts everyone around him. He needs me. He needs a therapist and anger management. You're not qualified to fix him. She closed the trunk, then stood there, keys in hand. I suppose you want me to choose him or the neighborhood. You already chose. Barb, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, last week, last night. You choose him every single time. So that's it. You're cutting me off. I'm protecting myself. If you ever decide you want a relationship with the neighborhood more than you want to enable your abuser, you know my number. He's not. She stopped, probably remembering the destroyed living room, the knife, the arrest. It's complicated. No, it's really not. She drove away without saying goodbye. I stood in my driveway, watching her taillights disappear, feeling something between grief and relief, mostly relief. That night, alone in my broken house, I ordered Chinese food and ate it straight from the containers. No ESPN blaring. No Barb hovering anxiously trying to keep the peace. Just me, my phone on silent, and the blessed quiet I'd paid so much to achieve. The doorbell rang around 9. I checked the camera. A man in a suit looking official. I opened the door cautiously. Ms. Thompson, I'm Robert Hargrove, Derek's brother. I could see the family resemblance. But where Derek was all bulk and rage, Robert looked tired and apologetic. I heard what happened. I wanted to apologize for all of it. You don't need to apologize for him. Someone should. He handed me a check. This won't cover everything he broke, but it's a start. And I wanted you to know I support whatever charges you're pressing. Derek's been getting away with this for too long. Barb doesn't agree. Barb's not my president. She's his enabler. They never last once the money runs out. He paused. But you know that already. Yeah, I do. For what it's worth, you did the right thing. The LLC, the eviction, all of it. Clean and legal. Derek expected you to fight dirty like he does. You outsmarted him. I learned from the best. Unfortunately, Robert nodded. Take care of yourself and don't let Barb guilt you into dropping the charges. Derek needs consequences, not another rescue. After he left, I stood in my empty house, my truly empty house, and felt the full weight of what had happened. In 6 weeks, I'd gone from independent homeowner to unwilling host to domestic violence victim to whatever I was now. But I was still here, still standing in my house, my name via LLC on the deed, my future stretching ahead without the chaos they brought. It had cost me my neighborhood president, thousands in damages, and whatever illusions I'd still harbored about community fixing itself. Worth every penny. 2 days after Derek's arrest, the letter arrived. Not from him. He was being held in county pending his hearing. This one came on Liberty Holdings letterhead signed by property management. I almost laughed. Maggie had insisted on maintaining the corporate fiction even in our private correspondence. The letter was formal, professional, and ice-cold. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Kensington, following the recent criminal incident at the property and the arrest of Mr. Derek Kensington for destruction of property and assault with a deadly weapon, Liberty Holdings LLC has determined that your continued occupancy poses a significant liability risk. Your original 30-day notice to vacate remains in effect. However, given the circumstances, we strongly encourage you to expedite your relocation. Any remaining personal property must be removed within 14 days. Items left beyond this deadline will be considered abandoned. We wish you the best in your future endeavors. Sincerely, Property Management Division, Liberty Holdings LLC. I'd written it myself, of course, but seeing it on official letterhead felt like armor. Corporate language as shield against neighbor manipulation. My phone had been buzzing all morning, unknown numbers that I let go to voicemail. Word traveled fast in the neighborhood. By lunch, the messages were piling up. Aunt Sarah, your president is here and she's a wreck. How could you? Cousin Jamie, heard you got Derek arrested. About time someone did. Uncle Pete, neighbors don't do this to neighbors. Call me. Another aunt, your poor president. After everything she sacrificed. I deleted them all. 20 years of silence when I needed help. And now everyone had opinions. The next call I couldn't ignore. Maggie's name lit up my screen. Derek's lawyer reached out, she said without preamble. Public defender. They're angling for a plea deal. Of course they are. He wants to plead down to misdemeanor property damage, probation, anger management classes, drop the assault charges. No, that's what I told them. But Lila, realistically, with his age and no serious prior, how is that not a prior? Bar fight. Apparently nothing domestic. The DA might take the deal just to clear the docket. I stood in my boarded-up living room. I'd had to cover the window he'd broken and felt the familiar rage. So he gets another slap on the wrist. Not necessarily. I've sent the video to the DA. Emphasize the domestic angle, your history, but you should prepare yourself. The system isn't great at protecting victims from neighbors. I know. God, did I know? That afternoon I drove to the hardware store for more cleaning supplies. The cashier, A young woman with tired eyes recognized me from previous visits. House project? She asked, scanning the glass cleaner and trash bags. Something like that. I hear you. My ex trashed my place last year. Still finding glass in weird places. I'm sorry. Don't be. Best thing that ever happened. Him showing his true colors like that. Judge couldn't ignore video evidence. She handed me my receipt. Document everything. Honey. Every single thing. I'd been documenting. Photos of every broken item. Every damaged wall. Receipts for replacements. The hole in the wall from the thrown bookend. Perfectly preserved. My living room looked like a crime scene because it was one. The insurance adjuster came by that evening. A middle-aged woman who walked through the destruction with practiced eyes. Domestic incident? She asked, photographing the knife marks in my kitchen table. My former neighbors. He's been arrested. Good. She made notes on her tablet. You'd be surprised how many people don't press charges. Neighbors. You know. I know. She pointed to the destroyed artwork. You have receipts for these? Most of them. They were from local artists. Get statements from the artists about replacement value. Original art's tricky, but we'll make it work. She paused at a neighborhood photo. The glass spiderwebbed but still hanging. You okay? Hon. Getting there. It gets better. Once they're gone, it gets so much better. After she left, I sat in my ruined living room and tried to imagine better. The house felt different now, violated, hostile. Every sound made me jump. Every car passing could be Derek out on bail coming back to finish what he'd started. My phone buzzed. Another unknown number. This time I answered. You ruined my life. Derek's voice slurred and angry. He was calling from jail. You ruined your own life. 47 years old and facing prison because you couldn't keep your mouth shut. 47 years old and facing prison because you pulled a knife on your neighbor. Small distinction, but important. Your president won't even take my calls. Smart woman. This is all your fault. If you'd just been reasonable. Reasonable? You destroyed my home. It was never just your home. The mask fully off now. His voice raw with rage. I deserved a piece of it. I raised this neighborhood. Put up with your complaints for years. That house should be partly mine. You didn't raise the neighborhood. You terrorized it. There's a difference. Ungrateful. When I get out. I hung up and immediately called Maggie. He just called and threatened me from jail. Jesus. He's stupid. That's recorded. I'll get the tape and add it to our file. Violation of a protection order I'm about to request. He seems to think the house should be partly his. Based on what? Squatter's rights? He's delusional. She paused. How are you holding up? I'm managing. Have you considered talking to someone? This kind of neighbor trauma. I have a therapist. We've been having emergency sessions. Good. Keep your doors locked. Security system on. These types escalate when they feel cornered. That night I couldn't sleep. Every shadow could be Derek somehow out, somehow here. At 3 a.m., the same time he destroyed my things. I found myself standing in the living room with a baseball bat, heart pounding at nothing. This was what he'd reduced me to. A scared woman in her own home, jumping at shadows. No, this was what I was choosing to move through. There was a difference. I spent the pre-dawn hours researching security systems, doorbell cameras, motion sensors. By sunrise, I'd ordered everything. Fort Knox had nothing on what my house would become. Barb finally called that afternoon. Her voice was small, defeated. They're saying he could get 5 years. He won't. He'll plead down, get probation, probably violate it within 6 months. You sound like you don't care. I sound like someone who's watched this pattern for 20 years. Barb. She took a shaky breath. I need to get some things from the house. Clothes, medications. Can I come by? When? Tomorrow morning. Fine. You have 1 hour. Bring Sarah or someone to help. I won't be there. You're leaving me alone in your house. It's not my house. Remember, it belongs to Liberty Holdings. The fiction felt like protection. The property manager will let you in. I arranged for Maggie's assistant to supervise the visit. I couldn't watch Barb pack up the remnants of their invasion. Couldn't watch her carefully fold Derek's shirts, knowing she'd take them to him eventually. Instead, I drove to the beach, sat on the sand, watching waves erase footprints, thinking about patterns and cycles and the undertow of toxic power. My phone buzzed with updates. Barb had arrived, was packing, was crying, was done. When I finally went home, the house felt lighter. Their things were gone. The recliner, the oversized TV, the clutter of 2 lives forced into my space. Barb had left a note on the kitchen table. Lila, I'm sorry for all of it. I know you don't believe me, but I am. I love the neighborhood always. Barb. I crumpled it up, then smoothed it out, then put it in a drawer. Maybe someday I'd believe her. Maybe someday she'd choose differently, but today wasn't that day. The security system installer came that evening. A young guy who walked me through every sensor, every camera, every panic button. This is bank-level security, he said, impressed. You expecting trouble? Not anymore, I said. That's the point. After he left, I stood in my fortified house and felt something shift. The fear was still there, might always be there, but it wasn't in charge anymore. My phone rang. Maggie again. Good news. The jail call was enough to get a restraining order. He can't contact you directly or through third parties. Can't come within 500 feet of you or the house. What about when he gets out? The order stands. Violation means straight back to jail. And Barb, she's not named in the order. That's your call. I thought about the note, the apology, the 20 years of choosing him. She's got my number. If she wants to use it without him attached, she can. Fair enough. The 14-day deadline for property removal stands. After that, we can move forward with the formal eviction if needed. It won't be. They're gone. You sure? I looked around my empty, secured, damaged but still mine house. Yeah, they're gone. That night, for the first time in months, I slept through until morning. No footsteps in the hall, no raised voices through walls, no midnight destruction, just quiet and the hum of my new security system standing guard. The war for my house was over. Now came the harder battle, learning to feel safe in it again. The 14th day arrived with unexpected quiet, no dramatic last-minute appearance, no pleading phone calls, no Derek pounding on my door demanding his imaginary rights, just morning fog rolling in from the ocean and contractors arriving to begin repairs. We'll start with the structural damage, the lead contractor, Miguel, explained. Walls first, then flooring. Should take about a week if all goes smoothly. I watched them unload materials, covering my furniture with plastic sheets, transforming my wounded home into a construction zone. It felt appropriate somehow. Everything out in the open, being rebuilt from the damage up. Maggie called while they were setting up. The deadlines officially passed. They have no legal claim to re-enter the property. Just like that. Just like that. Liberty Holdings can formally take possession of any abandoned items, though I suspect they won't want Derek's garbage. Definitely not. I'll donate what's salvageable. Smart. Also, update on the criminal case. Derek violated the protection order 3 more times with those jail calls. The DA's adding charges. He really can't help himself, can he? Abusers rarely can. It's about control. And he's lost all of it. I spent the morning working from my bedroom while construction noise filled the house. Between client calls, I sorted through the remnants Barb and Derek had left behind. Old magazines, broken electronics, clothes that smelled like entitlement and defeat. Each item went into either the donation or trash pile. No nostalgia, no second-guessing, just clearing space. Around noon my phone rang. "Aunt Sarah, don't hang up. I'm not calling to guilt you. That's a first. I deserve that." She sighed. "Look, I've got your president here, and she's a mess, but not the way you think." "What do you mean?" "She's actually talking about leaving him for real this time." I'd heard this song before. "Sure she is. I know. I didn't believe it either, but something's different." She saw the video. "Lila, the one of him coming at you with his fist raised. The detective showed it to her when she went to visit him and she broke down completely. Said she knew he hit you when you were new, but told herself it was discipline, that it wasn't that bad. But seeing it on video, seeing him ready to hurt you again." Sarah's voice cracked. She couldn't deny it anymore. I sat on my bed watching contractors patch the hole the thrown bookend had made. "It's been 20 years, Sarah. 20 years of choosing him." "I know, and I'm not saying forgive her or trust her or even talk to her. I'm just saying maybe there's hope. Maybe." "What does she want?" "Nothing. That's the weird part. She hasn't asked for anything. Not money, not forgiveness, not even contact. She just sits here going through apartment listings, looking at jobs. It's like she woke up from something, or she's performing until he gets out. Maybe, probably, but Lila, she gave me something to give you." Sarah paused. "Can I drop it by? I won't stay. Won't pressure you. Just want to hand it over." I agreed, curiosity winning over caution. An hour later Sarah knocked on my door. She looked older, grayer, carrying the weight of neighborhood drama. "Here," she said, handing me a manila envelope. "She wanted you to have these." "What is it?" I didn't look. She just said you'd understand. After Sarah left, I opened the envelope. Inside were documents, the life insurance policy where I was still the beneficiary. Despite everything, the savings bond she'd hidden from Derek in my name, and a letter handwritten on notebook paper. "Lila, I won't ask for forgiveness because I don't deserve it. I chose him over the neighborhood again and again. I told myself I was protecting everyone by keeping the peace, but I was really protecting myself from being alone. Seeing that video broke something in me, or maybe fixed something that's been broken for 20 years. That's my neighborhood he was going to hurt. And I stood by and let it happen again. I'm not going back to him. I know you don't believe me, and why should you? But I'm done. I've got a job interview at the grocery store tomorrow. Sarah's helping me find an apartment. I'm 59 years old and starting over. But that's better than dying slowly in his shadow. I'm putting the savings bond in your name officially. It's not much, but it's mine, not his. The life insurance stays yours too. Derek doesn't know about either. I love the neighborhood. I've always loved it. I just loved my fear more. Your president, who's trying to do better." I read it twice, then folded it carefully and put it in my desk drawer next to her previous note. Hope and skepticism warred in my chest. How many times had I wanted to hear these words? How many times had I believed she'd change, only to watch her crawl back to Derek? But the documents were real. The savings bond was worth $5,000. Not a fortune, but significant for someone who'd let Derek control their finances. The fact that she'd hidden it from him, kept my name on it, suggested something I'd never suspected. A tiny corner of her heart that Derek hadn't colonized. The contractors worked through the afternoon, their hammering and sawing drowning out my churning thoughts. By evening the walls were patched, smooth, and waiting for paint. Miguel showed me the progress. "Tomorrow we sand and prime. Day after paint, then we tackle the floors. It already looks so much better. Amazing what you can fix with the right tools and time," he said. "The bones of the house are good. Solid, just needed surface repair." After they left, I stood in my living room, plastic covered and construction dusty, but mine. The violence Derek had carved into the space was being erased, replaced with fresh drywall and promise. My phone buzzed. Robert texting to make sure the check had cleared, asking if I needed anything else. I thanked him, told him the repairs were underway. He responded with a thumbs up and Derek made his choices. Now he faces them. That night I couldn't sleep. Not from fear this time, but from something harder to name. The letter from Barb sat heavy in my thoughts. I'd built such strong walls against her, necessary walls, protective walls. But what if she really was changing? What if I missed the chance to have some kind of relationship with the neighborhood because I couldn't risk believing? At 2 a.m., I did something I hadn't done in years. I wrote her a letter. Not to send. Not yet. Just to clarify my own thoughts. Barb, I got your letter in the documents. Thank you for protecting those from Derek. It means something that you had that foresight, even if you couldn't protect us in other ways. I want to believe you're done with him. I want to believe you're choosing the neighborhood, choosing the possibility of us. But I've wanted to believe that so many times before. So here's what I need you to understand. I can't be your safety net. I can't be the reason you leave or the place you land. You have to do this for yourself. Completely separate from me. Get your job. Find your apartment. Build your Derek-free life. If you can do that, really do that for 6 months, a year, without going back, then maybe we can talk about rebuilding something. Not what we had, because that was broken from the start. Something new. Something where you're my president and I'm your neighbor, and there's no violent man standing between us. But if you go back to him even once, even for a moment, we're done forever. I can't watch you choose him again. I won't survive it. I love the neighborhood too. That's why this hurts so much. Lila. I sealed it in an envelope, addressed it to Sarah's house, but didn't stamp it. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But writing it had loosened something in my chest. The next morning brought more contractors, more noise, more progress. I worked from my bedroom, occasionally venturing out to see walls transforming from damage to whole. Miguel's crew was efficient, professional, erasing Derek's tantrum with skilled hands. Paint color, Miguel asked, showing me samples. I chose a soft sage green, different from the beige Derek had complained was too fancy. My house, my choices. Maggie called with an update. Derek's hearing is next week with the protection order violations. He's looking at staying in until trial. When's the trial? Could be months. Courts are backed up, but that works in our favor. The longer he sits, the more likely he is to take a deal. I thought we weren't letting him plead down. We're not, but he might plead to the charges as they stand. Save the court time. Either way, he's looking at real time. Good. How are you doing with all this? I looked around my under-construction home, thought about Barb's letter, about rebuilding more than walls. I'm processing. It's a lot. It always is when the dust settles. You've been in survival mode for weeks. Now you get to figure out what comes next. What came next? I'd been so focused on getting them out, on protecting myself. I hadn't thought much beyond that. Now I had a house to reclaim, a business to refocus on, a life to rebuild without the constant threat of Derek's violence. And maybe a neighborhood to reconnect with if she could stay away from him. If I could trust her. If we could both be different than we'd been. But first the walls. First the floors. First making my home mine again. Every corner swept clean of their chaos. The contractors painted all afternoon. Sage green covering the patches and scars. By evening my living room looked like a different space. Fresh, clean, unmarked by violence. Just the floors now, Miguel said, surveying their work. 2 more days. You'll never know anything happened here. But I'd know. I'd always know. The difference was now it would be a story of survival instead of surrender. A story where I fought back using law instead of fists. where I protected myself with papers instead of hiding, where I won. As the contractors packed up for the day, I made a decision. I took the letter I'd written to Barb, affixed a stamp, and walked it to the mailbox at the corner. Whatever happened next, whether she stayed strong or fell back into Derek's orbit, at least I'd said my piece. The sun was setting over Pinecrest Villas, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. My house stood solid against the evening light, wounded but healing, reclaimed and reinforced. Tomorrow the floors would be repaired. The physical evidence of Derek's rage would be gone, replaced by smooth surfaces and fresh beginnings. But the real repair of trust, of community, of feeling safe in my own skin, that would take longer. Still, I was here in my house, surrounded by the life I'd built, protected by the boundaries I'd enforced. Derek was in jail. Barb was maybe finding her spine, and I was learning what it meant to win a war without becoming a casualty. The ocean breeze carried salt and possibility. I breathed it in, let it fill my lungs, and went inside to my sage-green walls and my hard-won peace. The floors were finished on a Thursday morning. Miguel's crew had worked magic, replacing the gouged hardwood with seamless patches that matched perfectly. You'd never know violence had scarred this space unless you knew where to look, and I was the only one who did. All done, Miguel announced, pulling up the last of the protective plastic. Good as new. Better, actually. We reinforced the subfloor where it was weakening. I wrote the final check, adding a generous tip. They'd done more than construction work. They'd helped me reclaim my sanctuary. That afternoon I stood in my empty living room, sunlight streaming through the repaired window. The sage-green walls glowed soft and peaceful. The floors gleamed. Even the air felt different. Lighter, cleaner. Mine again. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number that I almost deleted. Until I saw the preview. This is Barbara. I got the job. My president using her own name. Not Barb. Like she was reintroducing herself. I stared at the message for a long moment before typing back. Congratulations. Thank you. I start Monday. Stock clerk. But it's honest work. That's good. I also wanted you to know Derek's trial is set for October. I won't be attending. I had to sit down. In all the scenarios I'd imagined, Barb skipping Derek's trial hadn't been one of them. She'd stood by him through every court date for years. Okay. I typed, not trusting myself with more words. I mean it, Lila. I'm done. Sarah's helping me move into a studio apartment this weekend. It's small, but it's mine. First time I've had my own space since before you moved in. I'm glad you're safe. I wrote, and meant it. I love the neighborhood, came her reply. No response needed. Just wanted to say it without Derek's voice in my head telling me how to mean it. I didn't respond, but I didn't delete the conversation either. Progress, maybe for both of us. The next few weeks passed in a blur of normalcy that felt almost foreign. I worked with clients, cooked meals in my peaceful kitchen, slept through entire nights without jumping at sounds. The security system stayed armed but quiet. No one tested its boundaries. Jessica came over for wine and movies, exclaiming over the repairs. It looks amazing, like nothing ever happened. That was the point. No, I mean it. You can't tell. It's like they were never here, but they had been here. The hypervigilance remained. The way I still checked locks twice. How I startled when trucks that sounded like Derek's drove by. Those scars would take longer to fade than the ones on my walls. Derek's trial approached with inevitable momentum. Maggie kept me updated. He'd fired his public defender. Hired someone cheap who promised to expose the conspiracy. Good luck with that, I thought. Hard to conspiracy your way around video evidence and violated protection orders. He's claiming you manipulated him into violence. Maggie told me over lunch that you orchestrated everything to steal his rightful command center. His rightful command center in the house I bought with my money before he ever set foot in it. Logic isn't his strong suit. His lawyers actually arguing that establishing the LLC was fraudulent concealment. Is that a real thing? It can be, but not here. Every I dotted, every T crossed. Liberty Holdings is bulletproof. October arrived with unusual warmth. One of those California autumns that felt like extended summer. I dressed carefully for court, professional but not provocative. Nothing Derek's lawyer could twist. Jessica offered to come for support, but I declined. This was my fight to finish. The courthouse in downtown felt both larger and smaller than I'd expected. I found Maggie in the hallway reviewing notes. "Ready?" she asked. "As I'll ever be. Remember, you're just a witness. Answer what's asked. Nothing more. Don't let them bait you into arguing." "I know." Derek entered in an orange jumpsuit and shackles, looking smaller than I remembered. Jail had worn him down. The bulk softened. The swagger diminished. But his eyes still held that familiar rage when they found mine. I testified for 2 hours. Yes, he'd moved into my home. Yes, I'd asked them to leave. Yes, he'd destroyed my property. Yes, he'd threatened me with a knife. The video played on a large screen, Derek advancing with raised fist. Me backing away with phone held steady. The knife incident. Him dropping it only when I called 911. Derek's lawyer tried to paint me as vindictive, manipulative, a homeowner punishing her neighbors for imagined slights, but the evidence spoke louder than his insinuations. The destroyed property, the threatening jail calls, the protection order violations, a pattern of violence impossible to rhetoric away. Ms. Thompson, Derek's lawyer said during cross-examination, "Isn't it true you transferred your property to this LLC specifically to evict your neighbors?" "I transferred my property to protect my assets from someone who'd proven violent. But the timing was after Mr. Kensington assaulted you. Self-protection isn't manipulation. You could have simply asked them to leave. I did multiple times." He responded by destroying my home and threatening me with a knife. The jury took 3 hours to convict on all counts. Assault with a deadly weapon, felony vandalism, criminal threats, violating a protection order. Derek's face went purple as the foreman read guilty again and again. During sentencing 2 weeks later, the judge gave him 4 years with time served and good behavior. He'd be out in 2. But it was a felony conviction that would follow him forever. Exactly as Robert had said. As they led Derek away, he turned to look at me one last time. No words, he'd learned that much. At least, just a look that promised this wasn't over, would never be over in his mind. I met his stare calmly, then turned and walked out of his life forever. In the parking lot I found Barb. She looked different, older, but somehow younger too. Wearing clothes that fit properly, hair its natural gray instead of that harsh red. We stood apart, neither moving closer. "I didn't go in," she said. "But I needed to know it was real. That he's really going away. 2 to 4 years. Good." She took a shaky breath. "I've been seeing a therapist. Sarah's friend recommended her. We're working on patterns. Why I choose men like Derek. That's good. Barb, I'm not asking for anything. I know I don't deserve." She stopped, composed herself. "I just wanted you to see that I'm trying. That I meant what I wrote. I see you." We stood in that parking lot. 20 years of damage between us, neither knowing how to bridge it. Finally she nodded and turned to go. "Barb." She stopped. "Maybe coffee sometime after the new year if you're still." I gestured helplessly. "Still Derek free?" She almost smiled. "I will be. Coffee would be yes. I'd like that." I drove home to Pinecrest Villas as the sun set over the Pacific. My house stood welcoming in the evening light. Porch light on. Security system ready but unneeded. I disabled the alarm and walked through my living room with its sage walls. Kitchen with its unmarked table. Office restored to my design. Bedroom that was purely sanctuary again. In the backyard I'd planted a garden. Nothing fancy, just herbs and vegetables, things that would grow with tending. The basil was coming in beautifully. The tomatoes showing their first green fruits. Life pushing up through earth, reaching for sun. I made dinner, a simple pasta with fresh basil, and ate it at my table in peaceful silence. No ESPN blaring, no walking on eggshells, no calculating moods and managing tempers. Just me and the home I'd fought to reclaim. That night I removed Derek and Barb from my emergency contacts, replacing them with Jessica and Maggie. A small thing, but symbolic, choosing my own community now. The people who'd stood by me instead of against me. Before bed, I did something I hadn't done in months. I left my bedroom door open, just a crack at first, then wider, then full open to the hallway. No need to barricade myself in anymore. The monsters had been evicted legally and thoroughly. I slept deeply and dreamed of nothing. The blessed, boring nothing of safety. 6 months later I met Barb for coffee. She'd kept her job, her apartment, her therapy appointments. We talked carefully about small things, her work, my business, the weather, building something new on the ashes of what Derek had burned. It wasn't perfect. Maybe it never would be. But it was ours. Without his shadow looming over every word. A year later Liberty Holdings quietly transferred the property back to my name. The corporate shield had served its purpose. I own my home free and clear. No ghosts in the paperwork. Derek got out after 18 months. Good behavior, overcrowding. He moved to Nevada. Robert told me, started the cycle over with someone new. I felt sorry for her, whoever she was. But I'd learned the hard lesson that you can't save people from their own choices. Barb and I had graduated to monthly dinners by then. Cautious relationship full of boundaries, but relationship nonetheless. She never mentioned Derek. I never asked. Some doors once closed should stay that way. And me? I expanded my financial consulting business. Bought the house next door as a rental property. Built the life I'd always wanted. Peaceful. Ordered. Mine. Sometimes I still check the locks twice. Sometimes a raised voice makes my heart race. But mostly I water my garden and work with my clients and live in my sage green sanctuary. I won by refusing to fight on his terms. By using patience and paperwork instead of fists and fury. By protecting myself with laws instead of locks. By choosing myself finally and fully, in the house that was always meant to be mine. Thank you so much for listening to my story today. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Please drop a comment below and let me know what you thought. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit that like button if the story resonated with you. And if you really want to help others discover this story, please hit the hype button so more people can hear it. Until next time, stay strong and protect your peace.